Bingo. We are live, and we already already got a first comment. Thanks, Puck. Hey guys, Ethan Michael here, your friendly neighborhood atheist. I'm super excited. I will be having a discussion today with Joel Settecase. Apologies. I am beyond nervous right now. This is our first time talking. I'm super excited. I've watched a couple of his videos. Definitely picked up some things, a few things I'd like to challenge you on. But I couldn't be more excited. And the point of this is for us to raise awareness on not just atheism, but showing that two people can have varying points of views and still have respectful and constructive dialogue. So Joel Settecase is the founder and lead teacher of the Think Institute. Former pastor, Joel partners with churches to help believers articulate, share, and defend the Christian message. Joel has worked in the fields of Christian education, worldview, evangelism, apologetics, and leadership since 2009. Joel earned his master's in philosophy of religion from the Trinity Evangelical Divinity School in 2017. He is the author of, is it Catechids? Is that correct? Catechids, aka the New Covenant for the little ones. And today he is the host of the Think podcast. Joel is married to, is it Eliza? Elisa, sorry. Joel is married to Elisa, and they have 4 children. So, Joel, the microphone is yours.
All right. Well, thanks so much for having me, and I'm really excited to be on with you. My friend Larry was on with you a couple times, 3 times, I think, and
yes,
I really enjoyed those. And really, my big idea today is that while anyone can do good, to be good requires God. And moreover, I would say to be good requires Jesus Christ. So in the course of this conversation over the next 56 minutes or so, my intention will be to defend that proposition and also to challenge the idea that it's possible to be good without God. And I would encourage our viewers to, while this is a friendly discussion, I would encourage our viewers to really listen for which of us is consistent with his own principles and worldview. For me, that's going to mean I need to remain consistent with what the Bible actually does teach, since I'm a biblically minded Christian. And for my discussion partner, that's going to mean being consistent with a worldview that claims to believe that God does not exist and all we are is matter in motion. All that exists is molecules and collocations of atoms and proteins. And I don't want to put any words in his mouth, so I'll let him articulate his own worldview. But look for consistency and look for arbitrariness and which worldview can actually support his can support its own conclusions based on its own principles. So hopefully that doesn't sound too combative at all, but
no, be as combative as you like. We're both friendly guys. We're doing this for not just fun, but to raise awareness.
Yeah.
A couple things. One is I want to be very clear. Atheism is not a claim saying there is no God. And I personally will not say there is no God. That would require me to support said claim with evidence, and I cannot prove to you God doesn't exist. So I am on the fence of I don't know, but I remain unconvinced at this point until evidence presents itself. So to be good requires God. I would obviously disagree with that. I think it is completely possible to be a good human being without God. For example, my freedom ends, like if I want to swing my fist, my freedom ends right before I hit your face. So I do my best to take a rational understanding of the consequences of my actions. And if I use, for example, well-being as a goal, if you and I can agree that getting your head chopped off kills you, you don't want to die, then we can both agree that we shouldn't chop your head off. And I think you can use that across the board for almost anything to get to at least where I stand morally. To be clear, though, atheism does not hold any view on morality or anything else.
Well, that's not really. I would push back on that.
How so?
What when you say atheism does not hold any view about? You said it doesn't hold any view on God. Then you said it doesn't hold any view on morality.
No, it doesn't hold any view on the position of God does not exist. So it is not a claim that God does not exist. It is simply, I'm unconvinced.
Well, atheism is the belief that God does. Atheism is a lack of belief in God. Yes,
a lack of belief.
Which a lack of belief in something is the corollary of that is a belief that it does not exist.
That's not correct. It's just simply I'm unconvinced.
So would you put yourself? Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
So for example, let's imagine we're in court right now. Mm-hmm. If you're not convinced the individual is guilty, does that mean you're convinced he's innocent?
If I'm not convinced, well, at that point, I wouldn't call myself an guiltiest, right? I would say that I was agnostic about it. Would you call yourself agnostic?
I would consider myself an agnostic atheist.
You're going to have to. What do you mean by that?
Okay, so Gnostic referring to knowledge, mm-hmm. Atheism referring to the lack of. So I lack the belief, but I also am unconvinced that a God exists. But I'm not making a claim that there is no God.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
No. I want to hear. So what claim are you making? What would be the claim that do you believe?
In terms of what? Because that's a pretty large question.
In terms of God's existence, what do you believe about the proposition God exists?
I believe it's highly probable that he does not exist. However, I'm not going to outright say God does not exist, because to me that would be very dishonest. I can't sit here and say, hey, Joel, I need evidence for God existing, and then turn around and say, well, God doesn't exist, but I don't need evidence to prove that. So that would be dishonest from my point.
So, okay, an agnostic would be someone who has exhausted their search about God, their search for God, and has basically given up the search and saying, and essentially has come to the conclusion we can't know. Have you given up your search?
No, absolutely not. I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm doing this. This is one of the reasons, I want to go to church. Like, I scheduled my next 2 weeks for 2 different churches. I'm very excited. I am genuinely seeking the truth wherever it leads. If it leads to God, by all means, make me a believer. But I need that evidence to believe. Agnostics, I've never heard the term that agnostics have given up their search. Agnostic just is only a claim of knowledge. So I don't know. That's all agnosticism refers to.
Okay, so an agnostic would be someone who doesn't think God can be known.
Correct.
Yeah. So that would be a positive statement. To say I am an agnostic is the corollary of that. Another way of saying that would be saying I don't think God can be known, which is a positive knowledge claim. It's a knowledge claim about what can be known. It's an epistemological claim about knowledge.
So sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was saying, so yes, it refers to nothing is known or cannot be known. It's not specifically say there is nothing known. So let's pull the definition. A person who believes that nothing is known or can be known of the existence or nature of God.
Yeah. So that's a positive belief. A person who believes that.
I would disagree, because it's not outright stating a person who believes it can never be known.
Can you read it again?
Sure. A person who believes that nothing is or can be known of the existence or nature of God.
So that's a positive claim that nothing is or can be known. No? I'm just going off the definition you just read.
Okay. Going off that, See, because the second part of that is a person who claims neither faith nor disbelief in God. And I wouldn't consider that part a positive claim, would you?
Who claims neither? Well, it would be a positive claim that God has not revealed himself to me in such a way that is sufficient by my standards.
All right. So
it's still a positive claim. I mean, I lack belief in, flying unicorns, but I also believe that they don't exist. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Go ahead.
I would agree with you completely, and that's the same position I would hold with God.
So the difficulty that you run up, and we should probably get to our subject, but the difficulty that you run up against is that, and hopefully we'll see this as we go, but the difficulty you're going to run into is the burden of proof is on you to show that you can know anything or have any kind of morality apart from God, because and I haven't established that yet, so I hope to establish that in our discussion, but that's going to be my thesis, is that to be good and really even to know what goodness is, you're going to need God. You're going to actually scripture, and further, you're going to need Jesus Christ. So maybe we should dive into it.
Let's go right into it. All right. Would you like to start? Or feel free to go ahead.
Okay. Well, so when we're thinking about morality, I guess, maybe we should start with this question, because we're talking, I mean, it's embedded in the very title of our discussion. Can you be good without God? Maybe we could define what it means to be good. Would you like to share your definition of what it means to be good?
I guess good would be kind of, I guess we could say moral, but at the same standing, you and I are going to have different opinions on what's moral. So maybe we can say less harmful or not harmful. I guess I would define good as well-being. That's generally how I decide what is, I don't want to say what is best for somebody else, but I consider my own well-being and then apply it to said person.
So what do you mean by well-being?
Life is preferable to death. Health is preferable to sickness. Mental and physical well-being.
When you say preferable, sorry to...
Okay, no, not at all. So would you for this conversation, would you agree that life right now is preferable than us dying or being killed?
Am I glad that I'm not being killed right now? Yes.
Right. Okay.
Sure.
So
of course.
Off of that well-being, we can obviously move forward and agree, okay, well, if we don't want to be killed, we don't want to kill anyone else.
Well, connect those dots for me, if you would.
Connect which? So, okay.
How do you go from your personal preference to what you just said? We don't want to kill anyone else.
So if I don't want to die, if I don't want to be killed, wouldn't it make sense that I shouldn't kill somebody else?
To me as a Christian, or to you as an atheist? I think to me as a Christian, of course.
I think you're overcomplicating it. It's
how so?
Do you really? To me. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm trying to see the connection between your desire to stay alive and you putting an ethical requirement on others that they shouldn't kill. What's the connecting principle there? How do you get from the is of your preference to the ought of somebody else?
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
You got a visitor.
Hey, Taco, can you go over there? I'm so sorry, buddy. Sorry. It's my nephew. Apologies. He's okay. So if we both if we want to evaluate what is best for one person, so let's say right now, if you don't want to be sick, if you don't want to get sick, would you want somebody else to get sick?
Well, okay, so you're asking a Christian that question. So
it shouldn't matter what you are. Do you want somebody else to be sick? Yes or no?
Well, wait, you said it shouldn't matter. That's a should. That's an ethical question. It should not matter. But we haven't established how you get to a should in the first place. So how do you get from what is, I don't want to be killed, to what should be? That's what we're trying to establish. So I'm trying to figure out how you connect the dots from your preference to an ethical requirement for everybody, or for me, or for you.
I can't say what's best for everybody. I'm only going on my base understanding of the world. So for example, if I personally don't want to die, I feel like I'm repeating myself now. If I personally don't want to die, if I don't want to be killed, I shouldn't do it to somebody else.
See, that's so David Hume, who was an Enlightenment thinker, famously debunked the idea that you can go from an is to an ought. Simply saying I don't want to be killed is an art. You're sharing something that is true about your personal feeling, but you need a connecting principle. You need a principle to get you from what is your personal preference to what should be or what ought to be. And that's the very question that we're trying to discover. And as a Christian, I'll be happy to share how I get there.
Absolutely. I'd love to hear this.
Well, I think you should probably share yours first, since I want to make sure that unless you don't have one, unless it's just arbitrary. Is it just arbitrary?
I guess by your definition, it would be arbitrary.
No, but
what
is it by your definition? Is it arbitrary?
I wouldn't consider it. I mean, I think it's pretty. I feel like you might be overcomplicating this a little bit, because I feel like this is a very simple concept. We can both generally agree that we don't want to do harm to somebody else, or we don't want harm to others. I'm going to do that as a
Christian. I'm trying to figure out why you, as an atheist, because you said, so maybe I'm a little confused, because you said atheism. I know when we spoke earlier, you said atheism doesn't make any positive claims about morality. I know you told Larry that before.
Correct. It has nothing to do with anything except the lack of belief in a God.
Right. So there are obviously going to be implications to that we should probably flesh out. If God doesn't exist, this is the discussion, right? What are the implications of God hypothetically not existing? And so you're telling me that you can go from your personal preference, I don't want to be killed. You can go from that to an ethical requirement that others should not kill others. But then you've also said that you don't know what's best for everyone. So I'm trying to figure out, how do you go from that is to what ought to be, given your atheism?
Okay. Again, it's not from an atheistic worldview. It's just from my personal worldview.
Which is okay.
Which typically, yes, you would define it as secular humanism. But I mean, to me, it's not really a jump. I'm trying to process what you're saying here, and I must admit, I'm very nervous right now.
It's
my nerves. Listen, you're good.
Don't be. No, this is honestly these are questions we all have to answer.
Oh, absolutely.
And you have to think critically about this, because if I wish I was eating French silk pie from Baker Square right now. Okay. I love it. I love it way too much. You can't, you put it in front of me, I'm going to eat it. But that does not entail that you ought to, eat French silk pie. Correct?
Of course.
Right. And there's no connecting.
I would agree. That's French silk pie. That's not life and death.
But who cares? I'm going from a preference to an ought for others. So you've got to demonstrate how you've got to demonstrate a qualitative difference between my desire for French silk pie and your desire not to be killed, and how mine doesn't lead to an ethical requirement for everyone, but yours does. Why does my preference for pie not translate into something everyone should do, but your desire not to be killed does translate? See, as a Christian, I have a reason for that, but as a secular humanist, what's your reason? Because God hasn't told you. So what is it?
God. My reason is simply understanding the dangers of any negative actions I take. I don't want to hurt anybody. Like, I have no reason to do that.
Is that just personal preference?
You could say that's a personal preference. Yeah. I don't want to hurt anybody.
Totally. And that's great. I mean, I'm glad to hear you say that, but
I would hope so.
What if your personal preference changes and tomorrow you do want to hurt someone?
Then to me, I would be immoral.
But you wouldn't, because at that point, your preference would be to hurt someone.
Okay. But if we put 10 people in a room right now, I would venture a guess that 90% of them would agree that you don't want to hurt somebody, or if you don't want to be hurt, you shouldn't hurt somebody else.
What if all 10 are abortion doctors?
Well, that's an abortion debate. That's something very different.
What if all 10 are Bolshevik revolutionaries in 1917 or Nazis in 1939? Okay. You see what I'm saying? We can't take a vote.
But here's the thing. Nazism negatively impacts other people. They're doing harm to others. So
negatively by what standard, though?
So it depends on what we're referring to. If we talk about the torture chambers, that's pretty negative. I mean, I don't think you would find yes, I'm sure you'd find one person that would say, hey, I want to be put in that. But the majority are going to agree, God or no God, they don't want to be tortured.
But that didn't seem to stop the Nazis. And what makes their preference any worse than yours?
Because they're actually doing harm against two people against their will.
So I'm sorry. I'm still confused. Have we established that doing harm to others is ethically wrong? Because right now you've said that it's your preference, and obviously I agree that it's wrong because I believe that's what God commands, and I'm happy to share my view. But I'm still wondering, given your atheism, why do you say that it's wrong? You see, I'm still hung up on this because you said you don't like it, but we both agreed that your preference could change tomorrow.
Yes, but I feel all right. I just feel like I'm repeating myself. But if you want to keep,
that's okay.
No, I'll one more time. One again, atheism has nothing to do. It literally only refers to my lack of belief. That's it. So, me personally, and I would think the majority of people or anyone in the comments maybe chime in. Is there anyone in the comments that actually wants to be killed or wants to be harmed? I mean, to me, that's a simple question. You put 10 people in a room, you ask them, they're all unanimously, most likely, going to agree that doing harm is bad. So I feel like you're taking a very simple concept and you're blowing it up into something it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, I hear that. I'm most definitely not trying to blow it up and make it more complicated. I guess so. If I understand correctly, if we got 10 people in a room, your example of getting 10 people in a room and asking them, is your morality then pretty much? Would you say it's kind of democratically based? Like we go. So is it
based on populum? No.
Is it? Well, that's my question is. First, you were talking about your personal preference, how you don't want to be killed, and then using that, extrapolating that into a principle. But now you're saying, but if we should really do it by vote, we should ask 10 people.
Not in all scenarios. So this will actually lead me into a question I was going to ask you. Okay. So on your stream, you had brought up slavery, and you had talked about how God. It was. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I don't want to misquote you. So please, if I'm wrong, correct me.
Sure.
You said that God gave a list of examples or how to treat slaves. Now, to me, sorry, is that before I move forward? Is that correct? I don't want to mess up your wording.
In the Bible, slavery is regulated so that, for example, slavery is an institution that's been around since the dawn of man, pretty much, and slaves were usually treated pretty badly. In the Old Testament scriptures, though, you do have requirements that the slaves would be set free every 7 years, and they couldn't be abused, and they were treated, surprise, surprise, as human beings made in the image of God with dignity. And so by the time you get to the New Testament, you've got even more, more historically unprecedented moral requirements for slave owners. You've also got moral requirements for slaves, and you've got encouragement to slaves that if they can gain their freedom, they ought to do so. And then you've also, astonishingly, you've got a logic in the New Testament that naturally led to the abolition movement. It's only been Christian civilization that has ended slavery. There's never been another civilization that's done that. So the abolitionist movement was based in Christian principles, and that's that goes back to these Christian ideas that which we haven't. Again, I sort of haven't laid out my case for why what I think about morality, but when I do, hopefully we'll see that it's consistent with the idea of treating people with dignity and ending slavery. Sorry, that was way more than you asked.
No. So I was thinking. So you'll be able to lay your foundation. I was thinking. Let me just follow up with my question.
Sure.
We can go through some of the comments, and then you can go into what you wanted to say about morality.
Sounds great.
So my issue right now is why. Okay, would you agree that slavery is immoral, whether from your standard?
Are we talking about human chattel slavery like existed in the United States and in the Western world?
Any type of slavery where you are, quote, owned by another human being. Do you think owning a human being is wrong?
So obviously this side of the Civil War and knowing the horrific atrocities that the evil, I mean, I can say evil, atrocities of, American and Western chattel slavery. And that would go for the slavery that took place in the Muslim world, in Africa, in China, the incredible degradation that's going on even over there now in sweatshops. Yeah, I 100% condemn that based on biblical principles. Where I would be cautious of painting with a broad brush is when you have situations like, situations that would happen quite frequently in the ancient world, for example, where a woman, let's say her husband dies, and in that society, being a single mom, for example, was pretty much a death sentence. And so what she would do is, let's say she would go to a wealthy family and say, hey, I will work for you. You give me room and board. I'll pledge my allegiance to you. You treat me good. And we'll call it fair and square. And then I'll be protected from marauders, rapists, abusers, and the worst elements of society.
That's terrible, though. You don't find that terrible that someone is so in fear for their life that they have to go and essentially be someone's slave?
Are you saying you put her out on the street?
I'm not saying I'd put her on the street, but being made a slave is a terrible thing. Like, to me, at some point, whether it be in the Bible, God should have just come down and said, like, why didn't he say, hey, slavery is wrong?
I'm sorry. You said it's a terrible thing, but based on what? From your worldview?
From my standards of how to treat other human beings.
But we're talking about your moral feelings.
Yeah. Okay.
So what?
Christian or not, do you think slavery is wrong?
So I think I just explained that.
Right.
Let's say 99 times out of 100, unless it's to somehow preserve the well-being of somebody. Yeah. But I believe that it's wrong because God made us in his image.
That's fine. But we both agree that slavery is wrong.
I don't know that you've established that. I mean, maybe your moral feelings would say so, sure. But given the scenario that I just said, how would you respond to that? What do you do to the single mom who comes to you and says, give me shelter and food and I'll work for you?
I would do my best to, of course, help her, but I wouldn't make her a slave. I think that no form of slavery, in my opinion, even indentured servitude, it's morally wrong. Like, we're human beings. We're not supposed to be slaves. Like, that's, to me, that's a simple concept.
To be, though. But I mean, so you're speaking right now like you believe we're made in the image of God and that we have
No, I'm not.
Well, no, you are. That's what you're talking about. Is you're speaking about human beings as if they have inherent dignity and worth and value.
Yeah, I believe we do have value, but that has nothing to do with God.
Go on.
No, that's it. I mean, to me, it doesn't have anything to do with God. Like, I don't get my feelings from God.
Is that an arbitrary feeling?
I guess technically, if you want to say it is, yeah. Well
then,
but I mean,
honestly, so what?
Okay. Why do you say so what?
Well, why should anyone? Okay, hear me. And I'm not saying this to be harsh because I have all the respect for you in the world.
We're good, man. We're good.
Okay. Why would anyone care? We're talking about, can you be good without God? We're not talking about, do I like chocolate or vanilla ice cream better?
Absolutely.
So who cares? Who cares what your preference is? If tomorrow you change your mind and you say, you know what? Actually, I think I want to go enslave me a bunch of people. I could condemn that as wrong because the Bible condemns man stealing, kidnapping, and
but it doesn't condemn slavery.
The Bible does absolutely condemn the kind of slavery that took place in the Western world, in Africa, and in the majority in the Roman world.
At 100%. What point did the Bible, God, or Jesus specifically condemn slavery and say, do not own slaves? It's wrong in all scenarios.
In the Old Covenant, there's a prohibition against man stealing. You may not kidnap a person, which is exactly how American and Western chattel slavery happened. Is, one tribe would conquer another tribe, they'd kidnap all the men and women, and then they'd sell them to Westerners. That's the Bible 100% absolutely unequivocally condemns that. And it does so on the basis of God's decree, and also ontologically on the basis that human beings are made in the image of God, according to Genesis 1:27. That's you're speaking like a Christian, Brandon.
So I don't, it's funny. My mom says the same thing. She's like, I think you have Jesus's teachings in you. Like, that's one of my mom's saying.
Well, you were obviously raised with some kind of a religious background.
Yeah, I was raised, a base theist. I guess you could say Christian, but it depends on whose standard of Christianity. I went to a Catholic school. I became an atheist a few years ago.
Okay. Yeah, it's clear you're not speaking like someone who was raised Buddhist or Hindu, or
no, definitely not.
And you're also not speaking like someone who was raised atheist, by the way.
No, I definitely wasn't raised an atheist. My mom, the other day I was at dinner with my parents and my stepdad. This is the first time we had an interaction since he found out I was an atheist. And you know what he said to me?
What?
Now, keep in mind, different culture, he speaks differently, but he looks right at me and with his accent goes, "What is this no believing in God bullshit, Brandon?" I'm like, sorry, Dad. Like, I just disagree. And he said, "Well, do you know what the proof of God is? The proof is your nephew right there. Have a kid and then you'll believe in God." I'm like, "Sorry, Dad, that's not, having a child isn't evidence for God." Yeah. But what do you say we jump into some questions real quick?
Sure, yeah.
Is that okay? So I'm going to try and fly through these. Everyone, I apologize. I am my own moderator, so I'm doing my best to read the comments, put them on screen, and process everything he's saying. So first we got Trina, big question. We are the only animals to believe, worship, or our creator. Animals as a whole aren't bad. Tigers go on a rampage and kill for no reason. To other mammals and such, they don't know what God is. They're good nonetheless. A person can be good without a belief in God in many aspects. I would agree with that. I don't know, Joel, any thoughts?
So I just want to make sure I understand. So we're the only animals to believe or worship our creator. Animals as a whole aren't bad. I guess I would just say bad by what standard? I mean, animals from an atheistic standpoint, there's a secular humanist standpoint, there's no problem with a tiger ripping up a little baby bunny, and there's no problem with a tiger ripping up another tiger, and there's no problem with a tiger ripping up a human being.
I think, I don't want to speak for her. I think what she's saying is, for example, we see videos of one animal adopting another, one animal rescuing another, a different species. So how is that possible without God?
Well, first of all, God does exist. So God has, when I see that, I think, oh, look how cool God is with his creative power and the way he made animals to be able to do that. But obviously that doesn't disprove God. If you start from the notion that God doesn't exist, and then you go, look at this aspect of nature or that aspect of nature, and that is possible without God, all you're doing is just assuming your conclusion, and that's called begging the question. That's a logical fallacy. So that doesn't prove or disprove anything either way. If you start with God, you say, wow, praise God for that amazing example of his grace and his creativity. If you don't believe in God, who cares? It's a bag of protoplasm interacting with another bag of protoplasm. It's like, there's no meaning in that, objectively speaking. I might like it, but it's personal preference, but it doesn't signify anything about the moral goodness or badness of what I'm looking at.
Okay. Is the atheist point? Oh, sorry.
Are you going to respond to it? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm sorry. I'm what you said or what Trina said.
Oh, either one.
Well, with Trina, I agree with her. I think it's possible. Obviously, I think it's possible to be good without God.
What does good mean again?
Good is relative. So I guess we
can. Whoa. Good is relative?
Sorry. Not relative.
Good is not relative? Is good? Do you believe good is objective or subjective?
Oh, it's absolutely subjective.
Subjective?
Good, absolutely.
Huh. So it is relative.
Yes.
So there's no objective definition to the word good.
Well, there's a standard definition of good, but I wouldn't say there is an objective definition of good, because we can both
What is that standard?
disagree on what's good. Well, by standard, I mean the definition of good. I'm not saying, but personally, I think we each can have different standards of good. For example, you're pro-life, correct?
I believe murder is wrong, of course.
Okay, I'm pro-choice because I believe it should be up to the woman to decide. I am an advocate for bodily autonomy. To decide
the unborn child, or
of the fetus, yes.
Fetus just means child. That's Latin for child.
Okay. Then the clump of cells until it becomes a child.
You're a clump of cells, and so am I. On atheism, that makes perfect sense. What you just said, that makes perfect sense, because we're all clumps of cells. So
okay. So you believe quote, killing babies is wrong.
Obviously, yeah.
Okay.
I'm a Christian.
I obviously believe killing babies is wrong, but I am pro-choice.
So not killing them.
To me,
good in the womb is okay.
With limitations, yes. Until they're okay. So I am not a doctor, and I am not even going to try or attempt to explain when the baby's mind is developed and can start feeling pain.
Why would that matter?
Why wouldn't it not? Because
you're all about not causing harm, I thought.
Right, I am. So I'm also not. I don't believe in causing harm to the female. I believe the female should have the choice over what to do with her own body.
Which female? The one in the womb, or
no, the one that is pregnant.
How do you differentiate which one's more important and has value?
So the one that is, quote, getting the life from the dominant one would be the one that has doesn't have the say.
So is that a dominance-based morality then? Because so far we've heard personal preference.
I was just giving an example. I did not say it was a dominance-based decision. I was just giving an example.
Well, you can obviously see. So Brandon, what you're butting up against here is the difficulty, actually the impossibility of trying to have a moral standard without having an objective moral standard of God. I mean, what you said I thought was wonderful. You condemned slavery outright. I think that's beautiful. You condemned the Holocaust and murder. And yet here you are defending all the very same things that you just
I don't think it's murder. You believe it's murder. I do not believe it's murder.
But you have no standard of delineating when it's right to kill someone and when it's not. Do you kill a rapist? Would you kill a rapist?
Nope.
The Bible says you should kill a rapist.
Nope.
You wouldn't kill a rapist?
I would not. I will not kill anybody.
Really?
Yes.
So you don't believe in that? But you would kill the child of a rapist.
Okay. I'm sorry, say that again?
Well, if you're pro-abortion, you're in favor of killing the child of a rapist.
Let me be very clear. I'm not pro-abortion. I am pro-choice.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put words in your mouth.
That's fine, because I just want to be very clear.
Sure.
I am not an advocate for abortion. I am not saying, hey, go get this abortion now. You need it. I just believe that the woman should have the choice to do with her own body as she chooses.
And with the body that's within her.
Absolutely. Because it's dependent on her.
Okay. I've got a 2-year-old, man. She's very dependent on me and my wife.
This brings me to my point, though. That's where good is subjective. You and I have very different ideas of what's good. Okay. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, obviously, yes, but I don't think that's evidence for the fact that good is subjective.
How is that not, when we both believe we're doing good, but with completely opposing decisions?
Well, because believing something is not what makes something true or false.
Oh, absolutely. I agree.
Right. So the fact that you and I differ could mean we're both wrong.
Absolutely.
It could mean one of us is wrong and the other one is right. But one thing that can't be true is we can't both be right.
That's correct.
Yeah. So good is not subjective. If good were subjective, we would both be right.
Okay. So we would so by subjective, in my mind, I am right here. In your mind, you are right here. That is very subjective.
No, all that's saying is we disagree. That says nothing about the subjectivity or objectivity of morality.
I disagree with that statement.
Well, it doesn't. I mean, that's fine. But look, if you need a way of judging. See, this is the difficulty of trying to judge morality without God. Is there's no way of arbitrating between you and me when we disagree.
Right.
And the reality of it is, from an atheistic standpoint, there is actually no way of judging any moral decision or judgment.
You're
Other
right.
than
Because
what's that?
sorry, I was going to make a snide comment. I was just saying you're right, because atheism doesn't have any claim or view on that. I'm just trying to correct you because,
Well,
again,
no. So there's a reason I keep coming back to atheism, and I know you don't like me using that phrase, but there's a reason I keep coming back to it, and that's because atheism, as we established earlier, I think, at least as I hope we established earlier, is the belief in no God. It's a well,
lack the belief. Not again, no positive claim that there is no God has been made. Oh no. I hope we didn't lose him. Joel? Crap. No! I think his computer just froze, guys. Bear with me for a second. That's not good. All right. While I'm waiting for him to rejoin, Rami, isn't the atheist point about my freedom ending when my fist hits your face a form of utilitarianism? Or is situational morality? What makes it ultimately wrong? Also, what if the fist does hit the face and I get away with it, and the recipient receives it without protest? Yeah, he just dropped. Hopefully he'll get back on. Was that then a wrong act? So first, my freedom ending when you fist hit your face, a form of utilitarianism. No, I disagree, because again, I did say I'm not basing my argument off the majority. I'm going to try and fly through these as fast as I can. There's a lot more. And again, I apologize, guys. I'm moderating myself. Hopefully Joel will be back on in a moment. We need more questions for atheists right now. Anyway, so check it out. So next Tuesday, I'm really excited. Rick Lockhart will be joining us. Pretty excited to be debating him. We'll be in black and white, which I'm pretty excited about. Give me a moment, guys. I'm going to send him another invite to see if I can get him back in here. And I sincerely apologize. This is the first time this ever happened. This totally sucks right now. Barry, where are you at? You got to jump on this while we're waiting for him. Bingo.
Hey,
we're back.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah, it just totally locked up.
No, I lost internet somehow.
All right, well, let's try and fly through these. We're so behind on questions, and we're totally behind on our topic. So
okay.
That was for Trina. It's not really a question of can you be good without God. The question is, what does good mean without God? Okay. Alex, best guest. Things are wrong or right based on a commonly shared goal. If we agree that unnecessary harm is undesirable, then based on that standard, fist hitting faces are wrong. Agreed?
No, of course not.
I didn't think so.
No. Good is objective. I mean, again, I haven't articulated this yet, but no, goodness is not revealed to us by what we want, and it's certainly not revealed to us by by vote. Good grief, can you imagine if there's a difference between how we come to know what is right versus how things come to be right. So we might come to know what is right through various means. I could open up the Bible and see, thou shalt not steal. I could steal something and then feel guilty about it. Or I could, steal something and then see the damage that it causes in society. Now, those three things are all ways of discovering moral truth. And this is something I wanted to ask you too, Brandon, is this. Do we discover moral truth or do we invent moral truth? Because if morality is subjective, then we invent it. And so this idea that, it all depends on what our common shared goal is. I mean, that's, that by definition makes anyone who opposes the group, any social reformer is actually by definition immoral. So forget about Gandhi, MLK, Mother Teresa. They went against the norm, so they are actually immoral. That's no. That I of course I wouldn't believe. I wouldn't agree with that.
I wouldn't agree with that either. But I totally lost my train of thought on something you said. I'm going to keep flying through these comments real quick, so then we get back to the discussion.
I did used to be a preacher, man, so I'm long-winded.
No, that's fine. You're doing awesome, man. If one person thinks murder is good, is it good? I would say no. But I think Joel, I don't want to speak for him, he would say I can't say no. Is that correct?
Well, why do you say no? I mean, Brandon, all I've heard from you so far, and hopefully people who are watching can see this, and this is what I was trying to get earlier, because you are an atheist, because you are functioning in such a way that, and ultimately atheism is a decision of the will. It's a decision of, I'm going to live in such a way that God is not going to factor into my decisions. And so, because like you said, you can't prove that God does not exist, obviously.
Right, of course not.
Right. But you're choosing, I mean, you call yourself your friendly neighborhood atheist. I mean, obviously there's something about that title. So the problem is, again, I gotta push on this, is as a functioning in an atheistic way. I mean, if you prefer that, completely limits you when you're reasoning morally. All you can do is reason in terms of matter and energy, in terms of molecules in motion. That's it.
How?
Are you a material? I'm sorry, I should have asked this right away. Are you a materialist, a naturalist?
I'm gonna say no at this point.
Okay, so you believe in spirit?
No, I don't. I'm only saying no because I haven't. I hear that thrown around a lot, and I'm just gonna say no for right now.
No problem. Do you agree? Do you believe that would you say that matter and energy is all that exists?
All that exists? I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by all. I mean,
well, do you believe in abstract? Do you believe in the laws of logic, for example?
Yeah.
Or do you believe in?
Do they exist? Yes.
But do you believe in laws of morality?
So I believe morality is subjective. But
do you believe logic is subjective?
No. See, that's a tricky question for me to answer. I'd like to say no. I really don't see how logic can be subjective.
Right, because if it's subjective, then it's not subjective.
Correct, because then it's not. I mean, logic is foundational. I don't really see how it could be subjective.
No, right. I mean, the minute you start to say the laws of logic are subjective, that would mean the law of non-contradiction is not absolutely true, right, which would mean that you could contradict that statement and say it is absolutely true. So, I mean, and there'd be no problem. So no, so you're absolutely right. So you do believe that there are some things that exist that are non-physical. For example, the laws of logic, they're immaterial. Yes.
Yes. Agreed.
Where do those exist?
I mean, they're not tangible, if that's what you mean. I can't.
No, I agree. They're not tangible, obviously, as a Christian.
Okay.
But as a Christian, of course, I believe that they exist in the mind of God. They're part of God's perfect character, that's where I would locate morality as well. So there are, according to the Bible, there are objective moral values and moral commands and obligations even. One of those is do not murder. This is why you chafe at the idea of murder. Another one is you shall not kidnap and enslave. And that's why you chafe at that as well, because you're made in the image of God. Your difficulty is, you can't argue without the laws of logic, and you also know that certain things are wrong. I mean, okay. Your problem is you have no way of accounting for either logic or morality. As a Christian, I have no problem with that because I believe in a God who is immaterial, universal, objective. He's knowable. He has revealed himself to us. So as a Christian, I get all these abstractions. I get logic, morality. I also get scientific inquiry. I get, mathematics. As a secularist, hopefully, as a secular humanist,
Humanist.
you have no basis for any of those. And I'm not being mean. I'm not calling names.
No, I didn't take it like that at all, man. We're good.
All you've told me so far is that you prefer certain things. And Brandon, all anyone can say to that is, so what?
Okay, you're correct. So let me hit on this. This comment brings up an interesting point. Demonstrate that God is the answer. So, one, can you make me a believer right now? Show me what convinced you God exists. Use that to convince me God exists.
Use what?
Whatever convinced you that God exists, said evidence or whatever.
I've never not believed in God.
What about when you were born?
I don't remember when I was born.
Right, but I would assume you would agree that you weren't a Christian when you were born.
No one's born a Christian.
Right,
no, just like no one's born.
Everyone's born. No, everyone's born an atheist. There's a famous quote that I really love.
Statement.
Everybody is born an atheist until somebody starts lying to you. That's one of my favorite things.
That's arbitrary. How could you possibly know that?
Okay, so if a baby is born, do you think it has a belief?
Everyone knows God. Yes, of course.
So a baby who can't comprehend that minds exist outside of its own mind. You believe it?
You just said everyone's born an atheist. So, okay. So when you're born, you're not capable of answering those questions. But
no, absolutely, which is why you're an atheist, because you're not capable of answering those questions.
No, so since what the Bible says is this: from the beginning of creation, God's eternal power and his divine nature have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. So men are without excuse. You're without excuse. I'm without excuse if I were to deny God. So you've already said that you can't possibly prove that God doesn't exist, and yet you're choosing to live as though God does not exist. That's a volitional choice that you're making. And the getting down to brass tacks of it, Brandon, you're going to be accountable to God for the way that you lived your life at the end of your life. Unless you repent and trust in Jesus Christ, you're going to have to give an account for how, for a life lived in rebellion against God.
You know what? And I apologize.
No, go ahead.
I'm okay with that. I'll tell you. So I'll tell you this right now, and I absolutely do not mean this in any disrespectful way. This is just my thoughts. If God, to me, if he exists, he has a hell of a lot to answer. Sorry, heck of a lot to answer for.
To who, you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Who are you?
I'm apparently his child. Just like I would hold my parent accountable, I'll hold him accountable.
Not biblically, you're not.
Oh, okay. What would you consider me then?
Right now, I would consider you a human being made in God's image who's a sinner in need of repentance.
Okay, so
that's what the Bible says. The Bible does not call you a child of God. Not unless you... Well, no, and hear me when I say this. We have to be, if we're going to use biblical terms, we have to use biblical definitions.
Sure.
So in John chapter 1, verse 12, it says, to all who received him, Jesus, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. By nature, we are children of wrath. The reason why we're children of wrath is not because we have acted in ignorance, in non-culpable ignorance. In other words, you are not innocent before God. You yourself say that you can be good without God, but you haven't gone, unless you're going to debate this, and feel free to disagree with this, but you haven't gone your entire life even without violating your own moral standard. So by your own,
of course not.
Right. So by your own definition, you're not good, right?
I've made mistakes. No, absolutely. I would say I have tremendous work to do on myself.
Right, so by your own definition, you're not good. How are you going to stand before God? You see what I'm saying?
Okay. So if he exists, and if he lets me stand before him, the first thing I'm going to say is, dude, what is wrong with you?
You will not call him dude.
I will absolutely call him dude. I would say this to my parent, to anybody.
He's not your parent.
Like I said, I would say it to anybody.
I think you've got a misdefinition. Have you studied the Bible and who God is?
So I have read the Bible. It's been many years. I do need to read it again. Larry and I were actually just talking about that. And he made a recommendation on one. But
if you stand before the God of the Bible, Brandon, if you use, again, using biblical definitions for biblical concepts, if you understand, if you're going to speak, I'm not talking about Allah. I'm not talking about Brahman. I'm talking about, if you stand before the God of the Bible says every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord to the glory of God the Father. Now if you're going to use biblical definitions, you can't define God in any other way than your absolute creator and and Lord.
Well, okay, I'm not going to define him as that because I don't believe he's that. But
Right, but that's the concept of God that we're addressing
okay,
right now.
so based on your concept of God, I would stand before him and say, dude, what is wrong with you? Why are you letting all these children suffer? Why are people being raped? Why is sickness spreading? Like, I'm sorry, if you let me ask you this. You have children, correct?
Yeah.
What would you do if they were being attacked? Physically attacked?
Well,
You personally, I'm only talking about you.
Yeah, I would defend them.
Why?
Because I love them.
Okay, there you go. It's that simple. Why isn't God getting involved if he loves you?
Well, how does the Bible answer that question?
I don't know. You'd have to tell me.
Are you well? So let me first of all, if God didn't do what I would do, and yet he had a morally good reason for not doing that, would that satisfy you?
If he had a good reason for not doing that?
If he had a morally good reason, yes.
No, because I don't see any morally good reason for that.
Well, that's
to
not
be
what
acceptable.
I asked. That's not what I asked.
So I have to hear that reason. It would have to be an amazing reason to justify okay, let's just say going back to the Nazis, allowing concentration camps to happen. The fact that he has not gotten involved and helped anybody, in my opinion, makes him an immoral God if this God exists.
So first of all, that's a major assumption, saying God hasn't helped anybody. Second of all, you have no standard of morality. All you have is your own personal preference. Remember, you're matter and energy. I mean, you don't have. There's no standard.
By your standard, yes, I have no standard. But
you haven't given a standard outside of your own preference, unless I missed it.
If we agree on well-being as a goal,
we don't.
Then you're right. Then you don't have a standard.
As a goal, or as an objective standard for morality.
I
can agree that well-being is a goal, certainly as a Christian, but that's not my standard. That's not what I base my morality on.
That's what I base mine off of. That is my standard.
That's arbitrary.
Okay, so if right now,
why do you choose that? Why don't you choose morality by vote, or morality by pragmatism, or morality by rule of the strongest?
If we chose morality by vote, we could go back 500 years and vote that slavery was okay. So I would never.
Yeah, but you have no problem with that.
I have a major problem with slavery.
Not consistently.
Yes, I do.
You just have your preference.
Which is it? Okay, my preference is that slavery is wrong.
Right, but the slave owners had their preference.
Yeah, and they were wrong. Okay, if you and I agree,
based on what standard though?
Do you and I agree that slavery is wrong? You did say.
Okay, Brandon, you're trying to find common ground here. Here's the problem. The only way we can do this, the only way we can really productively argue this, is I'm going to have to step into your worldview for the sake of argument, and we can examine your worldview based on common shared presuppositions. After which, you can then step into my worldview. This is what I was trying to get at when I said, if you were to stand before God, you would not call him dude. Because if you step into my worldview, for the sake of argument, I'm not saying become a Christian, although that would be wonderful. But I'm not shy about the fact that's my goal. But but if you step into my worldview, you have to use biblical categories. So if I were to step into your worldview, I would be reasoning like you, and I would, like you, only have my preference, which can change based on what I ate this morning. So there is no objective basis for you condemning anyone else's preference. It's just you. It's just your mood. It's just your feelings.
It's not my mood. So you did agree. I don't want to speak for you. Sorry. You did agree that, for example, you don't want to die, and therefore you wouldn't want to kill somebody else, correct?
That's therefore you're importing a lot into that. Therefore, what you're trying to do is you're trying to equivocate between my moral reasoning and yours. My moral reasoning is not, I don't want to die, therefore I don't kill others. I do have a moral principle that says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But that's a biblical principle. Do you see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That comes from Jesus. Now, it just so happens that God has also designed the world in such a way that works out really well in society. But that's because that's God's design. The normative reason for why I hold that belief is because the Bible tells me that. It also happens to be personally satisfying to me when I live according to God's commands. So I've got my own personal satisfaction and my motivation of love of God and love for others. I've got the fact that society works well pragmatically when I follow God's commands. And then I've got the objective normative commands from God. But those three work in perfect harmony because God, who inspired the Bible, also created me and the world that I live in. That's why those three work together. You, on the other hand, so far have asserted that we are all somehow obligated for some reason to follow your preferences. And you haven't given any reason for that. It's just been arbitrary.
Okay, so let me flip the script here. If I take you,
okay.
No, I'm sorry. I want to give an example here. There's a reason I'm doing this.
Okay.
If right now I take you, Larry, I sorry, I don't want to say Larry. If I take you and 9 other Christians I know, I am going to get very different answers, which sounds like personal preference to me. How do I determine which one of you is getting the correct message?
Can you give me some examples?
Okay. I have I'll use my friend Rita. I have she is pro-gay rights. She's pro-gay marriage. I'm assuming you are not. Is that correct?
Well, do you know what the Bible teaches about it?
Go ahead.
Do you?
As I recall, Jesus never said anything about homosexuality.
Well, I didn't say what did Jesus. Well, what did Jesus teach about marriage? Do you know that?
It's between a man and a woman. Okay, so simple question. You believe it's wrong. I have another Christian who believes it's right. How am I supposed to tell the difference between the two of you?
You already said it. I asked you what Jesus taught. You told me. There's your answer.
So
again, Rita and I are not the standard of morality. Jesus is. So if we disagree, we just both have to go back and see what Jesus taught, and then there's our answer. Now, she might not like that. I might not like that, but I mean, you can't call any other position Christian. I mean, the word Christian has the word Christ in it. Like if I'm going to say, well, I'm a Christian, but I disagree with Christ. Obviously, you can see the inconsistency of that. I would hope you would call me out on that. If I was saying something, if I were going, Brandon, I'm a Christian, but I really think murder is perfectly fine. Even though Jesus tells me to love my neighbor and even to love my enemy, I don't agree with Jesus. Hopefully you would say, Joel, you're being totally inconsistent here. Even Jesus tells you, I don't believe Jesus is God. This is what you would say, obviously, right. But you're being inconsistent and hypocritical. And I would have to say, yeah, I'm being hypocritical. So I don't know why you're taking Rita's word for it. I mean, tell Rita to go read the Bible. No offense to Rita. I'm sure she's
no,
nice person.
Not at all. Yeah. All right.
Tell her to go read the Bible.
I want to read this comment from Robin.
Hold on. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. I get your point there.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Cut off your wife's hands if she disagrees with you. When men strive together one with another, and the wife of the one draweth near for her to deliver her husband out of... Actually, I should probably let you read this.
No. Cut off your wife's hand if she disagrees with you. When men strive together with one another, and the wife of the one draweth near for to deliver her husband out of the hand of him that smiteth him, and putteth forth her hand, and taketh him by the secrets. That means to grip him by the private parts. Thou shalt cut off her hand, thine eye shall not pity her. That's right. A quote from the Bible, Robin.
So thou shalt cut off her hand.
Robin is quoting scripture.
Yeah, no, I know. So then thou shalt cut off her hand. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that she quoted a Bible verse.
Okay, what are your thoughts on this specific part? Then thou shalt cut off her hand.
What are my thoughts on it? What do you mean?
You don't take issue with that?
How could I possibly take issue with it?
Cutting off someone's hand?
So you've got a situation where two men are fighting. A woman comes out and grabs one by the balls to twist his balls off. She's trying to castrate him.
Okay.
So this is basically what this is saying. This is part of the civil code of Israel. First of all, Brandon, do you have a problem with this?
Cutting off someone's hand? Absolutely.
By what standard?
By my own standard.
Brandon, who cares?
If you want to say that, that's fine. I care.
No, but I'm asking you.
Okay.
Why should I care?
Take out God for a second. Do you want your hand cut off?
Take out God for a second. You're talking
just for 1 second.
Listen,
do you want your hand cut off?
I can enter into your worldview for the sake of argument, but I can't, as a Christian, I can't possibly.
It's a simple question. Do you want your hand cut off?
Brandon, the whole point of that admonition, the whole point of that law in the civil code of Old Covenant Israel, which is not in effect for the church today, this is why you need to study your Bible, is of course you don't want your hand cut off. That's why it's a prohibition. If you don't want your hand cut off, don't reach out and try to rip somebody's private parts off. It's fairly simple. It's called lex talionis. This is for the same reason, by the way, why striking a pregnant woman so that she miscarries is also punishable, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. The point is you don't hit a pregnant woman.
I agree with you, but I don't believe an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Sorry, that's to me that's wrong. Like to me, forgiveness. Like I would rather.
Now you're talking like a Christian.
You would think so, but many Christians I see are for capital punishment.
Now, eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth was lex talionis. That was the law of retribution that was in place in the Old Covenant era, which said it's from Exodus chapter 21. It's when if two men are fighting and one of them hits a pregnant woman so that she miscarries, or if she gives birth prematurely, if it's actually a pro-life passage. If you cause the child to die, that's punishable that's manslaughter.
So if someone has an abortion, you think that person should be killed?
Well, look, okay, there's a vast leap of what you just did. You're going from Old Covenant law, Old Covenant civil law to New Covenant moral law. So I think I've made it pretty clear that abortion is murder, because there's no possible way you can differentiate between a human being, a child inside the womb versus outside the womb, unless you're talking about size or viability.
Okay,
or
so
location.
Yes or no? If right now I get a girl pregnant and and to be clear, I personally would never want a female to get an abortion in my life. I would.
Why? It's just, why?
To me, I am an adult, and if I get a girl pregnant, I would like to think and hope she would keep it. However, I would never demand it.
Why?
Because I don't want to say it's a consequence, but I accept the responsibilities of my actions. Therefore, if I get a female pregnant, I don't want to say if it's good or bad. That's just how I personally feel.
You don't want to say whether taking responsibility for your actions is good or bad, Brandon?
Oh, sorry. Taking responsibility for your actions. Yes, that's good.
Why?
Why
I agree that it's good. Of course. That's a biblical principle. As a man sows, so shall he reap. But why on earth, given your secular humanism, why would you possibly say that that's it's French silk pie versus apple pie, man.
You're right. So personal preference, then we'll stick with that.
That's.
But you still didn't answer my question.
Go ahead.
If a female has an abortion,
mm-hmm.
do you think she should be murdered?
Murdered? No. Murder is by definition an unlawful killing.
Should she be sentenced to death?
I think that you'd have to look case by case. Let me ask you this.
That really bothers me.
Is it wrong to take a child and rip off that child's arms and legs?
Absolutely.
And then crush? No, you don't think so.
Yes, I do think so.
You are pro-abortion, man. Abortion involves dismemberment of a child, the crushing of the skull.
Not of a child. Stop saying child.
Fetus means child. It's Latin for child.
Clump of cells. There's no mind. They have no mind. They have no pain.
Go Google right now.
A thinking agent.
Are you kidding me?
You think they can think at that age?
Hold on a second. Define human being. You said human beings have dignity. Who has dignity?
I mean, I would think everyone has dignity.
You don't think so. Not according to what you just told me.
You need to stop saying I don't think so. You continue to put words in my mouth.
Well, you just said it's okay to dismember a child inside the womb.
I didn't say child.
Fetus, which means child.
Again, so this is where our disconnect's coming in. I don't personally believe it's a child until it's developed. I believe
what stage?
So I don't want to. I don't want to be taken out of context or quoted incorrectly.
Totally. I would never want to do that.
I believe it's viability, which is, I'm probably wrong on this date. I think it was like 6 to 8 weeks is when they can first start to feel pain. if there's someone in the comments, here we go. Fetus can feel pain at 10 weeks. Okay, I was off. So 10 weeks. So prior to that, not that I'm saying go have an abortion, but at that point, I still believe it is up to the female to decide.
So, but you're pro-life after 10 weeks.
Okay, so personally, I'm pro-life anyway. In my personal life. However, I am pro-choice for everyone else.
After 10 weeks or before 10 weeks or what?
Up to 10 weeks. After 10 weeks, I would need to look more into it before I could make a set decision.
So how did you come to the conclusion that the pain of the child is the dividing line?
Not that I said that was the dividing line, but until it feels pain, or at least prior to it feeling pain, the person whose body it's attached to has the predominant rights. It is their body. They have the right to decide what to do with their body.
How do you know
no
that?
right to tell a woman you have to have this child.
How do you know that?
How do I know which part?
How do you know what you just said, that she has that no one has the right to tell someone such and such?
I'm saying that's what I believe.
But why do you believe that? Like, how did you come to believe that belief was true?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's true. I would just say that's how I feel. So if we go off, I'm an advocate for bodily autonomy. So I personally believe you should have the right to do with your own body as you choose.
How do you know that people should have the right to do with their body as they choose?
I wouldn't say that's knowledge. I would say that's what I believe.
Well, but you believe that that's true, right?
Do I believe it's true? That's just my belief.
Right, but you believe it's.
I believe
belief is something you
representing myself to the best of my ability with the knowledge I have.
Yeah. I mean, it's okay. Like, you believe it's true. I mean, that's what a belief is. It's a proposition that you hold to be true.
Right.
So I'm just wondering, how did you come to believe in that belief, that belief was true?
I see. Again, I think I don't know why you're saying, why do I believe it's true? I simply, I wouldn't call it truth. I'd call it more an opinion. I believe a person has a right to do with their own body as they decide. It is their body.
Okay, but you don't believe
I want to do with my own body as I see fit, and therefore I should allow the same with you.
Brandon, I hope you can see at this point that we haven't even gotten past square one, because we're trying to argue whether or not we can be good without God.
But we haven't even gotten to that topic.
Right. We haven't even defined the word good. I'm saying, okay, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so we're already 15 minutes over.
I know. Are people still watching? I don't even know.
Actually, yeah, this is the highest viewership we've had yet. So thanks, Joe. Pretty sweet. I think people this is, let me just say, this has been phenomenal. But I do want to give you, I don't know if you have any questions, or if you want to make a closing statement, because honestly, at the rate we're going, I feel like we could keep going for 2 more hours.
Do you want to go till 8 o'clock? I could go till 8 o'clock.
Okay, yeah, we'll give it 16 more minutes.
Okay.
Let's just make sure at 5 minutes too, we try and hit on some of the some of these questions or comments. And then also, Jen Chamberlain's watching. Jen, by the way, check this out. I'm super excited. So next week I'm debating Rick Lockhart. The week after, I don't have his name in front of me. I apologize. But the week after that, I don't want to. So I used to use the term anti-vaxxer. I believe they say informed consent is how they go. I will be having a discussion with a friend who is against vaccines. So that is going to be 3 weeks from today. So I'm very excited about that. Jen, I hope you'll tune in, since that is a subject important to you. Sorry, go ahead, Joel.
So we're trying to get to the heart of what the question of what the question is even asking. So ultimately, Brandon, I want to make things as clear as possible. So I'm going to put something out there, and you tell me if you think this is fair.
Okay.
So far, what you've put forward as a standard for goodness ultimately comes down to your moral feelings on any particular issue. Is that fair?
To an extent, yeah. Like I said, I use well-being, but yeah, that is a fair statement.
Well, but well-being is just, that's what you feel is
Correct.
okay. So really, you could have rephrased this question to ask, can we have moral feelings without God? Is that fair?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Can we, I'm going to be a little more
Did you say
charitable.
can we have,
How about this? Can we act in accordance with our moral feelings without God? Or can we act in accordance with our preferences without God?
absolutely, we can do anything without God.
No, but I mean, that's what I'm asking is that an accurate restatement of the question based on your position? Can we act in accordance with our moral feelings without God?
Oh, sorry. Yes, you can. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
That would be an accurate question.
Okay. So this, if that's the only question, if the only question is, can we act a certain way based on what we feel? Both of us would heartily say yes, and we would say sure. But we will have left a vast chasm between your position and mine, because no one is arguing whether or not we have moral feelings. But there's a reason why we didn't phrase the question, can we act in accordance with our moral feelings? Because that's just another way of saying, can we act the way we want to?
Right.
Anybody can act the way that they want to. A child molester acts the way he wants to. An abortionist acts the way he wants to. A slave owner acts the way he wants to. A person who runs a nonprofit acts the way she wants to. You've got to get to the point where you see that simply saying people do what they want is very different than saying people are good or bad. So from a Christian perspective, okay, so I'm going to give you a chance to respond to that, because I really do want to put forward sort of the Christian view, and I want to ask you to step into my worldview for the sake of argument, but I don't want to do that without giving you a chance to respond to what I just said.
No, you can continue.
Okay. So the Christian definition of goodness is that which is in accordance with God's perfectly good character. So as a Christian, not only do I have, as a Christian, I have an infallible, absolute, objective, universal basis for goodness. As a Christian, I have access to the invisible, immaterial, universal laws of morality, one of which is you shall not murder, another of which is you shall not mutilate the genitals of somebody, which hopefully you'd be against that, even though I think we got a little...
Absolutely, I'd be against that.
Yeah,
I'm against harm of any kind. I'm against capital punishment. I'm against...
But that's... Okay, that's what that passage from Deuteronomy was asserting earlier. As a Christian, I have access to all those things. Here's the difficulty. You also have access to it. You have access to the same Bible as I do. You live in the same world that I do. And you have a conscience that's been given to you by God. There's a reason why these three things are in such perfect harmony. There's a reason why you shall not murder is in the Bible. There's a reason why we have civil codes against murder. And there's a reason why you feel bad if you harm somebody, you murder somebody. That's because of God. So as a Christian, I would step into my worldview for a second and see the perfect cohesion and coherence between those three perspectives: society and what works, the world around us, my own moral feelings, which is what you've been appealing to all night, and the written code of God that we have in Scripture, perfectly exemplified in Jesus Christ. Now, there's another layer to it as a Christian, because as a Christian, I recognize that the same Bible that gives me objective morality also tells me and tells you that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. So this is why you were saying, and I agreed earlier, or I said it and you agreed, that we don't even live up to our own standards of what's moral.
Right,
so
absolutely.
We recognize that there are moral standards outside of ourselves, because if morality hinged on you and me and our moral feelings, it would be impossible to say that we didn't live up to our own standard, because whatever we did at any given point would be by definition what we wanted to do, and therefore would be by definition good. And since neither of us agrees that we always do what we want to do, or neither of us would say that we adhere perfectly to our own moral standard, that gives the lie, that disproves this idea that morality is based on my own or your own moral feelings. And the Bible agrees with that. But the Bible also says that the wages of sin is death. And so this is the warning that the Bible has for me and for you, is that if you continue to live out of harmony with God's, let me say this, if you don't get your sins forgiven, you will go to the inevitable outcome of
Which is
your lifestyle of sin, which is hell.
Okay. And what is hell?
Hell is alternatively called the lake of fire. It is the place of eternal darkness, gnashing of teeth, the wrath of God.
So I thought it was just hey, Larry, maybe you can chime in on this. I thought it was just eternal. I'm blanking on the word. You're away from God forever. Eternal. I forgot how Larry put it, but you're just nowhere. You don't exist. You don't have God. You have nothing.
No, it's not non-existence. It's when people say that it's the absence of God or it's separation from God, what they're indicating by that is the separation from God and his favor, grace, and goodness. It's not, it's actually the presence of God's wrath is what the Bible makes very clear. It's the absence of anything favorable from God, which makes perfect sense. If you reject God's grace and favor in this life, you're choosing your eternity. The Bible is very clear on this. The wages of sin is death. Well, when the Bible talks about death, there's physical death and there's spiritual death. So when God told Adam that he would die on the day when he ate the fruit, and then Adam didn't physically die, people say, oh, see, God was wrong. No, you don't understand the difference between physical death and spiritual death. The Bible makes a clear delineation between those two. Everybody dies physically, but only those who die without having their sins forgiven by Jesus Christ will die spiritually for all eternity. And that spiritual death is what I want you to avoid, and which is why I want you to come to receive Jesus as your Savior and Lord.
All right. So a couple quick things because we're getting close to time or getting close to overtime. So just to be clear, while you and I may not agree, I do live my life to the best of my ability. In the sense that, what do you mean? When did I not say I don't do my best?
Oh, you said you don't live up to your own moral standard earlier.
No. Yeah, I agreed with you. I haven't in the past lived up to my own moral standard, and I still make mistakes. Okay. But I actively do my best to live as moral life as possible. I actively do my best to help the people around me. When I still feel guilty, about a month and a half ago, I passed an animal dying on the road, and I didn't act fast enough, and I still feel guilty about that. Why? So you're because I didn't act fast enough, because I should have been quicker. If I had gotten there in more time, if I had thought to pull over faster, I could have gotten that animal help. So that eats at me. So you're telling me that based off everything I told you, simply because I don't believe in God, he's going to send me to hell, even though I do everything I can to make the world better for the people around me.
Brandon, you can't even define what the word better means.
Okay. I do my best to make everyone in my life happy. I go out of my way to do charity work. I go out of my way to donate my time and money. When people ask for help, I do my best to help them. You're telling me that God cannot look past all of that, or he can't look past my lack of belief and is going to ignore all the good I do in the world, or all the good I attempt to do in the world?
Well, do you think that God should look past all that?
Yeah. Because I'm sorry, if my child doesn't, if I have a kid and he's a great human being, but he simply rejects me, what kind of moral person would that make me if I sent him to get tortured for an eternity?
But Brandon, you haven't become a child of God.
Oh, okay, then I'm not a child of God yet. But you're saying, based on everything I've told you, it's still morally justifiable to send me to hell.
Well, so you want a biblical answer, because obviously I'm a biblical Christian, right?
No. I want your answer. Yeah. Sorry. Yes, I want a biblical.
I mean, listen. I'm not here to defend my own opinion. All I can tell you is what the Bible.
I just want a simple yes or no.
So by biblical definition, God is perfect. Do you understand that that's the teaching of what the Bible teaches?
Okay. That's not my question, though.
Well, no,
I
no,
just want to
I'm
know.
going somewhere. I'm going somewhere with this because if I say yes, you're going to go, oh, that doesn't seem right. It'll
You're
upset
right,
your
but
moral
I
feelings.
want to. No, it's not going to upset me. I'm going somewhere with this, so I just want a simple yes or no.
God's standard is perfection. Unless you're perfect by biblical standards, you deserve hell the same as I do.
So does that mean when you say perfect, you're perfect then because you're Christian?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
But that's not why I'm going to
And
heaven.
then okay. And then
Oh, wait, do you want to know why I'm going to heaven?
because you believe in God?
Nope.
Okay.
Because Jesus Christ died on the cross for my sins. And because God has given me repentance and faith. Because I entrust my life to Jesus. So according to the Bible, his goodness his perfect righteousness is imputed to me. That means credited to my account. And my sin was credited to him on the cross. No one goes to heaven for being perfect because no one is perfect. There's only ever been one who is perfect. So this is why you got to get biblical categories, because no Christian is going to tell you that they're perfect and that's why they're going to heaven. Anyone who tells you that does not understand the Bible any more than it appears you understand the Bible. No offense. When you say,
take it.
yeah, when you ask if I'm perfect, I would spend 5 minutes with me. I mean, like, of course I'm not perfect. I've got sins out the wazoo. I'm probably a much bigger sinner than you, but that's not why I'm going to heaven. And by God's grace, God's given me a lot of victory over a lot of sin in my life over the years. But even if I stopped sinning today, I would still have all this sin in my past to deal with, same as you do. So I would urge you to become a child of God by repenting and trusting in Jesus today.
Right. Make me a child right now. With the
Repent
little
and
time
believe
we
in
have
Jesus.
left, I need evidence. So what evidence do you have that God exists?
So we got into this in the Facebook chat that we had earlier. Define evidence and why it's important to you.
Reasonable, tangible. It's essentially reliable information, a body of facts.
Yeah. So here's the problem with you asking for evidence. Hopefully this is going to become pretty clear based on what I've said about morality. So let's tie in the conversation about morality. According to what we've just said, your way of judging what's right or wrong is basically your moral feelings. And actually, according to you, what is right or wrong is rooted in your moral feelings. So by asking for evidence, you are now appealing to a standard that is outside of yourself because you said it needs to be rational. Well, that appeals to a standard of rationality. You said that it's tangible. That appeals to an objective world around us that is accessible to the human mind. That it also presumes that the human mind is designed to recognize truth. But
may I jump in?
Oh, please. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Give me some type of evidence to believe in God. Based on our conversation, I think you understand how my mind works and what I'm looking for. So in 2 minutes, make me a believer. It should be very easy if you have evidence.
Brandon, there are books and volumes of evidence that have been written over the. I mean, all you have to do is search. I mean, look up evidence that demands a verdict. Brandon, what I'm telling you is this: your request for evidence presupposes immaterial laws of logic. It presupposes the intelligibility of the world around us. It presupposes uniformity in nature, that the future will be like the past. It presupposes the existence of mathematics. It presupposes that your mind is designed to recognize truth, that you have that there's a correspondence between your reasoning faculties and your five senses. It presupposes the ability to do scientific inquiry. You don't get that on secular humanism. You have got to assume that the God of the Bible designed you and the world and the immaterial laws of the world in perfect harmony before you can even begin to ask for evidence. So you sitting there and saying, give me evidence. The Bible says you have enough evidence now. So I'm going to sit here and tell you that you have enough evidence. If I were to give you evidence, I would actually be, for me to say, Brandon, you don't have enough evidence. So here's some evidence. You have to understand, I'm now reasoning like you. I'm now saying,
so you can't give me evidence because you don't want to reason like me?
I didn't say I can't give you evidence. Like I said, there's reams and reams and reams of evidence.
So here, let's make it even simpler. Say, Joel, What evidence do you have that Jesus was raised from the dead, and why do you believe that?
Huey. Huey's a friend. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What evidence? So he's on my team. What evidence do
So
we?
then that's a great question because
Yeah.
that's literally
Yeah. So as a Christian who already believes that the Bible is true, who believes that my reasoning faculties and my truth-seeking faculties are designed by God to seek truth, who believes that the universe exhibits uniformity in nature so that evidence is possible, scientific inquiry and historical inquiry is possible. As a believer, starting from that basis, I look at things like the existence of the church. I look at things like the manuscript evidence that we have for, let me back up. The existence of the church. How did a group of 120 non-Jewish non-believers with no belief in a pre-end times resurrection come to believe that their rabbi had risen from the dead? How did the 12 disciples come to be willing to die for their faith and to die for their belief that Jesus rose from the dead?
I gotta push a little harder here, just because we're really close on time.
Sure.
And by the way, thanks. Hi, Mom. My mom, as I told you, is a Christian. May not be Christian by your standard, but she is a Christian, and she hit it home. Brandon wants evidence. Explain your evidence. Give an example. I hear you telling stories, but give me a firm example for either.
Brandon, let me ask you this: is your mind designed to seek truth?
It wasn't designed.
Is your mind a reliable? Do you have truth-seeking faculties that are aimed at truth?
Absolutely.
How do you know that?
I do. So I cannot 100% say yes, they are completely working, but to the best of my ability and in communications with other people, I believe they are up to par.
Would you say that that's blind faith?
No, I would not say that's faith. I would say I'm basing that off the evidence of my own life and personal experience.
Right, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to account for the idea of evidence in the first place. So again, as a Christian, I have a basis for evidence. Brandon, what you need to see is epistemologically, you cannot justify your request for evidence. Again, as a Christian, there is historical, textual
you're
evidence.
You're really jumping around it here.
Because we're almost out of time.
Yeah, but all right, 1 minute. Give me evidence, something,
Brandon,
something to change my mind.
Here's some evidence. Your request for evidence shows, Brandon, hear me on this.
Okay.
You are reasoning like a man made in the image of God. Of course, you know that evidence is a real thing. Of course, but here's the problem, Brandon. You should be able to look at the radical conversion of Saul of Tarsus, of Peter, John, and James. Of course, it's evidence. Do you hear what you're saying? By any historical definition of the word evidence, by any definition, there is more evidence historically and textually that Jesus Christ died and rose again than there is for any historical.
Even my mom's chiming in and saying, just give physical evidence. So give me something. Listen, you're dancing.
Listen, Brandon. This is how we determine what happened in the past. It's called eyewitness testimony. I can appeal to eyewitness testimony all day. And here's what you will do. You'll say, no. Those people all believed their claims, so we can't believe it. Brandon, justify for me your belief in evidence. Now, okay, I'm giving you evidence because as a Christian, if you step into my worldview, there is textual evidence going back to the 1st and 2nd centuries that the Bible we have today is authentic, based on what was originally written. There is extra biblical.
The Bible is not evidence for God. The Bible is the evidence for the Bible.
That's arbitrary.
No, it's not.
Of course it is.
Saying the Bible is evidence for God. The Bible can't prove God. No, it can't.
Why not?
Well,
by the way, I'm starting with God.
That's the problem. You're presupposing God exists. I don't believe he exists.
But you're reasoning like one who does.
From that. No, I'm not.
Yes. Even your request for evidence presupposes that you believe you are able to reason.
So
Given your secular humanism, excluding God from the picture, you do not have an epistemology that allows you to ask for something like evidence. You don't have uniformity in nature. What would it possibly be based off of? A belief in uniformity in nature, that the future will be like the past. What could you possibly ground that in?
okay, let's
And
go.
you can't say experience because that's just begging the question.
Let's pretend it's a court case. Give me evidence that you would put in court to prove God or Jesus are real.
Brendan.
Real quick, Beta Master, just so you're aware, my mom is a Christian. She's not spoon feeding me. She actually doesn't like that I'm an atheist. So
yeah, that's not cool. Come on, Beta Master. So, Brandon, locating it in a court, we could ask the exact same question, because the whole reason why the idea of trial by jury and all of the legal rights, innocent until proven guilty, beyond reasonable doubt, these all arose in Christian civilization. And the reason why it's the same reason why modern science arose in the Christian world.
You're dancing again. So
no, Brandon,
this brings up a great point. Because you're dancing. Does Spider-Man...
Your subjective presuppositions do not agree with your objective presuppositions.
Okay. I have a comic book with Spider-Man in it. Does that comic book prove Spider-Man exists?
No.
There you go. That is my point I'm trying to make. You can't use the Bible to prove the Bible.
Show me the connection.
Okay, so if the Bible is evidence for God, then a comic book is evidence for Spider-Man.
What is
I'm using your logic.
What is the Bible? Is the Bible a comic book? Is the Bible the same kind of thing as a
but
comic?
I'm using your train of logic. It's literally the same thing. We're taking two books. You're saying one is evidence for God. I'm saying the other is evidence for Spider-Man. What's the difference?
Do you believe that a comic book is evidence for Spider-Man?
No, of course not. That's my point.
Do you believe that the Bible is the same kind of thing as a comic book?
Well, I would put it on. See, anything I say here is going to sound disrespectful. But I don't mean this in any disrespectful way, but just from my standard, how I see it, I do not believe the Bible is any different from any other fictitious stories.
Tell me how that's not arbitrary. Do you see the circularity? Do you see the circular?
Wait, how is that circular?
Okay, you just stated your belief, your prior belief that the Bible is no different than any other book. That presupposes, subjectively, you have a presupposition that the Bible is not written by God.
Okay. Correct, now, because you haven't proved it.
No. By God. No, listen. Go with me on this.
Okay.
You're starting from that presupposition. Are you so far so good?
I wouldn't. Okay, go ahead.
Are you starting from that belief that the Bible is the same as every other book?
Correct.
Okay.
As it holds no water, yes.
Which is to say the Bible was not written by God.
I do not believe it was. Correct.
Right. And now you're going to go in a very tight circle around and say, therefore, the Bible can't be evidence for God.
Correct. Because you can't use the Bible to prove the Bible. That is circular reasoning.
Brandon. What you just did was the tightest of most vicious of circles.
I disagree. You're dancing. You're dancing.
Brandon, I want to make this incredibly clear. You're starting from a belief. Your starting belief is that the Bible is just like every other book. That is the same as saying the Bible was not written by God.
Okay, so
that is the conclusion. Okay. That is the conclusion you're trying to prove. You're starting from your conclusion. That is a logical fallacy.
No, I'm not starting from a conclusion. I'm not saying God didn't write it. I'm saying I'm unconvinced that God wrote it.
Brandon, you believe
we need to continue this because we're going to keep going. We're already like 40 minutes over.
I know. So it's fun though.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a blast. Real quick, next
you need to see that circle that you're.
You need to see the circle,
Brandon.
You can't use the Bible to prove the Bible.
No, wait a second. First of all, you're making epistemological claims that you have no basis for. That being said, here's why I bring this up. Every reasoning process is ultimately circular. The reason why is because you have to start from some starting point, and eventually you have to establish why you chose that starting point. And that starting point is going to have to account for itself. So if you're starting from your own, for example, feelings, which is what you've sort of rooted morality in, then to give an account for your feelings, all you can say is, I feel that these feelings are right. That is a vicious circle. Now, if you were to start from scripture, as I do, the circle is broad enough to encompass, it's still circular because all reasoning is circular, but it's not a vicious circle. Hopefully,
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with this.
I get it. I get it. It was hard for me when I first heard it too.
So, real quick, next Wednesday at 6:30 will be Rick Lockhart, and we'll be talking about the miseducation of Christianity in black and white.
What does that mean?
I don't know. It was his topic,
Oh.
so I'm really excited to talk about him. Talk with him. The following Tuesday, flyer will be up soon. I will be debating Richard Graves. And then the following one, I will be debating, I don't want to use the term anti-vax anymore, informed consent enthusiast. So my question for you is, would you do this again? Since I feel like we could just go all day.
I think I'd be down.
Sweet. Yeah. All right, I'm going to give you closing remarks, 2 minutes, whatever you'd like to say.
Okay, so hopefully our viewers have been able to see that when it comes to morality, which is really what this debate has been all about, we've heard one side appealing to an objective universal standard that is unchanging throughout time and is objectively good, that actually leads to benefit for society and leads to moral satisfaction. It is in accordance with our moral feelings and what's best for society, and just so happens to be also encoded for us in written scriptures. The other side is appeal to moral feelings that are by definition non-authoritative outside of one's own heart, and even really not even authoritative on oneself, because one's moral feelings can change minute by minute, second by second. So we haven't really seen an argument for goodness in any objective sense coming from the secular humanist side. But hopefully, my hope is that I've established that the objective standard of goodness is actually impossible without God, although we all live as though we are living in God's world and we are made in God's image, which is why we agree on certain principles but have a hard time with others. So Brandon, my hope for you would be that you abandon your viciously circular reasoning, and I say that with all love and respect.
No, of course.
And would come to repent and trust in Jesus Christ as your Savior and Lord, believing that He died on the cross for your sins, and that you would allow Him to redeem not only your life, your eternal life, but also your reasoning and your feeling as well.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for this opportunity, Matt. I enjoy it.
I'll say the same thing I said to everyone else. Please pray for me. If you are in communication with God, pray that He gives you.
I am.
Okay. Then pray that He gives you. He should know what would convince me. So pray that He gives you the evidence to change my mind. Also, I got to give credit where credit is due. This has been tremendous, and if I was scoring this as a debate, I would say you won. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying you convinced me. I still remain unconvinced. I think you were absolutely dancing a lot around my questions, and you were just trying to go after my questions rather than actually answer them. That is my takeaway from this. However, I would still give you credit for, if we called this a debate, winning the debate. I do hope you're willing to do this with me again. I appreciate it. If you could definitely stay on the line, I'm going to end the stream. Did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No. Thanks, man.
All right. Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone has a good day. Join us back next Tuesday.